Very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about what the Combined Authority are doing on climate change. I've been a policy and economy advisor with North of Tyne since January last year, and prior to that I've worked on climate change, energy and sustainability for nearly 20 years. I'm actually going to go through quite a lot of information in quite a short space of time tonight, so if it's useful I'm also happy to provide a written version of this information afterwards if that would be helpful. So in terms of what the Combined Authority actually is, North of Tyne is a partnership between Newcastle, North Tyneside and Northumberland councils, and it allows collective decisions to be made across the North of Tyne area. Our responsibilities are different to the responsibilities that a local authority has, and we've got access to additional funding from government for the wider North of Tyne area. So just to give you a few examples of that, we manage an investment fund of £20 million per year to drive economic development and job creation. We also manage a 23 million adult education budget to ensure that adults over the age of 19 have got access to the skills and training that they might need to progress to employment or further training. We're also managing a 5-year, £24 million brownfield housing fund, and this allows investment in previously developed land that requires additional work to get it ready for new housing to be built. So in terms of the way we work, we have a Housing and Land Board that supports North of Tyne's ambitions around regeneration and housing. The work of the Housing and Land Board focuses around 6 key themes, and being climate ready is one of those key priority areas. So this really means prioritising housing development that includes renewable and low carbon technology, and also bringing forward proposals for a major energy efficiency retrofit programme. We've also got an inclusive growth board, and that works to integrate skills and employment programmes to improve people's life chances across the area. And then we're also part of a joint transport committee. Now, this covers the wider North East region, so it's not specific to North of Tyne, but we work across 7 local authority areas in terms of transport. Some of you might have recently seen that there was actually a draft North East Transport Plan out for consultation, and this focused on 5 key areas, 5 key themes, and 3 of those were specifically relevant to climate change. So they were around making travel carbon neutral, which will also help to address some air quality issues, to contribute to a healthier North East through active travel, which means supporting more walking and cycling, and then to make sustainable travel more generally attractive across the region, including public transport. So, as I've said, we are a partnership of the 3 local authorities, and we work very closely with them to deliver collective ambitions. We also work very closely with the North East Local Enterprise Partnership, local universities, and a whole range of other organisations. So, for example, we are strategic partners to the North East England Climate Coalition, and this is really a group of organisations that includes the voluntary sector, the private sector, and the public sector. Now, you may be aware already that all 3 of the North of Tyne local authorities and the Combined Authority declared a climate emergency in 2019, and all 3 of the local authorities have now published their net zero or climate emergency plans that show how they intend to achieve their ambitious emissions reductions targets. I'm sure that not everyone will have had a chance to look at those, so I'll just quickly tell you what the headline targets are. So we have Newcastle City Council has committed the city to becoming carbon neutral or net zero by 2030. North Tyneside have committed to half their own organisational emissions by 2023, and for the borough to be carbon neutral by 2050. And then Northumberland have committed to half their own emissions by 2025, and for the county to become net zero by 2050. I think it's really important here to point out that even before these climate emergencies were declared, all 3 local authorities have worked really hard over very many years to tackle climate change. So there's been a huge amount of work done, though that said, there's still a huge amount of work left to do. So the Combined Authority works in partnership to support the local authorities to achieve net zero ambitions, and we ourselves are also working towards becoming a net zero organisation. So what that means is that we will do everything we possibly can to reduce the emissions that are associated with our own energy use and business travel. Not that there's been too much of that over the past year. We'll also have a project funded by the Local Government Association to help us understand how we can more effectively consider climate change in some of the decisions that we make. In terms of what we're doing to add value to the work of the local authority, the first process that was approved in February last year was the creation of this Citizens Assembly, which is fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your recommendations at the end of this. Then going on to March last year, we had our Energy, Green Growth and Climate Change programme approved, and this allocated just over £24 million over the next 3 years. And the intention with this funding is that it will bring in additional private sector and public sector investment into the region. So to break down what we're actually doing through that, we have allocated 12 million to support offshore wind. We know that is a huge economic development opportunity for the north of Tyne as well as the wider northeast region. We're supporting the offshore wind industry by providing funding to support infrastructure improvements. So those are things that will help offshore wind and subsea companies to expand and win new contracts. And then we're also working with the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult to help grow local supply chain companies too. Part of the Energy, Green Growth and Climate Change programme is an allocation of 10 million, and this is to develop a Green New Deal fund. The purpose of this is really to create economic growth and new jobs in the green economy. We intend to do this by supporting projects that can create or safeguard jobs as well as reduce carbon emissions at the same time. Some of this funding will also be used to work alongside the North East Local Enterprise Partnership to ensure that we can provide commercial, legal and technical support that some low carbon projects might need to get to the point that they can access funding to be installed or built or delivered. Part of this allocation is also 2 million to support green skills specifically as part of our overall approach to skills in our key priority sectors, because obviously we recognise that there are huge economic opportunities associated with tackling climate change. Separate to this 2 million allocation for skills specifically, we're also starting to work with the New Economics Foundation and Transition Economics, which are organisations that are going to help us explore in more detail how we can support a just and inclusive transition to greener jobs. I suspect this is going to be talked about in a little bit more detail later on tonight, but basically a just and inclusive transition really just means ensuring as far as possible that everyone has the opportunity to benefit from greener jobs, including the people who are currently working in jobs that are based around or heavily reliant on fossil fuels. We're also about to undertake some work to help us understand whether it would be potentially useful to establish a local carbon reduction fund, and if so, what kinds of projects could potentially be supported by that. Now, at the moment, there is funding already available for the public sector, including interest-free loans that can fund energy efficiency improvements in public sector buildings. So as we're developing the work up around the local carbon reduction fund, we just need to be really sure that what we develop is additional to what already exists. We're also at the moment jointly funding research into what we can do to encourage and support the development of community energy projects in the north of Tyne and the wider northeast region. As it happens, we've actually got the fewest number of community energy projects in the country up here, even though they can bring economic, social, as well as environmental benefits. And then
explain what they are, Leanne. Do you want to explain what they are? Energy projects.
So community energy projects are projects that are They could be renewables, they could be energy efficiency projects, but they're really initiated by community groups. So it could be by a charity, it could be by a local community development organisation. So examples in the past have been where communities have got together to fund their own wind turbine so that they can generate an income from that, or put solar PV panels on a local school to reduce the energy bills of that school. So there's a huge range of things that are covered under the term community energy projects. Does that make sense? Okay. So the last bit of funding we've got under the Energy, Green Growth and Climate Change programme is for us to start some work this year to develop options around citizen, community and public sector engagement. Sorry, I am nearly finished as well, don't worry. Outside of the Energy, Green Growth and Climate Change programme, we're also about to fund some work to assess the energy efficiency of the existing housing across north of Tyne. And the purpose of this is really to develop an evidence base on what practically can be done to reduce the emissions from our housing stock, as well as to reduce fuel poverty and get a better understanding of what kinds of jobs can be created associated with the work that would be required to do that. And then last but by no means least, we're also working with a charity called Ashton on a climate change co-benefits project. Now, I'm well aware that the term co-benefits might not be familiar to everyone, but what it basically means is that organisations work together to develop policies or projects that can address several challenges at the same time. So, for example, we know that there are health benefits associated with reducing fuel poverty. We know there are health benefits associated with increasing active travel and people having better access to green space. So we're working in partnership with Ashton to creatively explore how we can better identify and increase the co-benefits that are associated with tackling climate change locally. I realise that's been a huge amount of information in quite a short space of time. I guess in summary, it's fair to say that we are a relatively new organisation and we're at the start of a journey towards net zero. So we still have a lot to learn and we've still got a lot of work to do. I do think that we've demonstrated some real ambition in quite a short space of time, and we are working hard in partnership to do our best to ensure that our area can meet net zero targets, as well as benefit from the economic and job opportunities that are associated with climate change. So thank you very much for listening. I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have.